1 Kings chapter 3, verse 16 through 28. Now 2 women came to the king and stood before him. And the woman said, O my lord, this woman and I dwell in the same house, and I gave birth while she was in the house. And then it happened on the 3rd day after I had given birth, that this woman also gave birth. And we were together, no one was with us in the house. This woman's son died in the night because she laid on him. So she arose in the middle of the night, and took my son from my side, and laid him in her bosom, and she laid her dead child in mine. When I arose in the morning to nurse my son, there he was dead. But when I had examined him in the morning, indeed he was not my son whom I had borne. Then the other woman said, No, but the living one is my son, and the dead one is your son. And the first woman said, No, but the dead one is your son, and the living one is my son. And thus they spoke before the king. And the king said, The one says, This is my son who lives, and your son is dead. And the other says, No, your son is the dead one, and my son is the one that lives. Then the king said, Bring me a sword. So they brought a sword before the king. And the king said, Divide the living child into 2, and give half to one and half to the other. Then the woman whose son was living spoke to the king, for she yearned with compassion for her son. And she said, O my lord, give her the living child, and by no means kill him. But the other said, Let him be neither mine nor yours, but divide him. So the king answered and said, Give the first woman the living child, and by no means kill him. She is his mother. And all of Israel heard of the judgment which the king had rendered, and they feared the king, for they saw that the wisdom of God was in him to administer justice. Amen.
My sources for today's episode are latimes.com, vocative.com, psychologytoday.com, and missingkids.org. Just be aware that some parts of this episode are a little graphic, so you may want to be careful who you listen around.
If you have your phones, go ahead and follow us on wherever you listen to your podcast so you don't miss any of our episodes. My name's Darlene.
And I'm Melody.
This is Hard Times and True Crimes.
Okay, Darlene, I have a crazy story today.
Okay.
Now, I feel like I say that every episode, but
They're all crazy.
They are. I mean, they are. So the one I'm going to tell you about, I remember when this happened. I was in high school, and I remember seeing it on the news, and I was just like, what in the world? And so when I came across it doing research, I just was like, I have to do this one. Okay, so I'm just going to jump right in. On July 23rd, 1987, a young lady pulls into a car lot in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and she asked to speak to one of the salesmen, Rob Moore. He's told that she's having a baby. So he goes out to the car, and he finds her actually holding a newborn baby.
Oh.
And it's wrapped in like a blood-stained dress.
Okay, she's had a baby.
Yes. And so the woman is obviously disheveled, sweating, bloody, and she asked Rob to ride to the hospital with her. Now, if you're wondering why she's asking for him, he was wondering that too. A week or so before, this lady, her name is Darci Pierce, and her husband Ray had been to that car lot shopping for a car. It was one that was more than they could afford, so they didn't actually get it. But for some reason, she goes back to that car lot where they had been. So this salesman, he does remember that she had been very pregnant at that time and was very close to delivery.
Okay.
He, was like going to try to help her the best he can. So here she is sitting in his parking lot with a newborn.
So was she driving by the car lot on the way to the hospital, and that's why she decided to stop and ask him, for help?
Yes,
pretty much.
Apparently she was in that vicinity.
Okay.
And had the baby on the way.
Okay, got it.
And I'll give a little bit more detail about that. She told him she had been driving on the interstate and had gone into labor. And so she had to pull off the road and give birth right there on the side of the road.
Oh, my goodness.
And get this, she had actually bitten the umbilical cord in half to cut it.
Oh, my gracious. Wow. She's one heck of a woman.
Yeah. So it was evident that this birth was very recent.
Right.
Especially, and the baby is actually still covered in mucus and blood too. Here she's asking him to ride to the hospital to go where she was already scheduled to meet her husband because she was actually due that day. And I guess they were I don't know if they were going to induce or what, but so she was already supposed to go meet her husband.
Okay.
I am sure that the car salesman, Rob, was thinking this is pretty crazy.
I'm sure.
So he goes with her. Now, she also has another odd request for him. There's a little toy gun in her back seat floorboard. And she says, would you get that and put it in my map door pocket for me? And so he moves that to the little map pocket, which was a little weird, but okay, whatever. 19-year-old Darci arrives at the hospital around 4:45 that afternoon. And that is the time that they log in as the baby's birth time, even though she had actually had the baby prior to that.
Okay.
Her husband, Ray, does meet her there, and the hospital staff checks the baby. But Darci does not want to be checked. She actually refuses multiple times for them to check her. She just wants to get her birth certificate filled out and go home. But she has blood and mud all up and down her legs. Her husband, Ray, is like, no, you have to get checked out. Yeah. It's like, and she is adamant that she is not going to get checked out.
Okay.
I'm thinking if you've just given birth in your car, it's pretty important to seek medical attention.
Yeah, you're going to want to.
Yeah, I mean, they have to also make sure that, everything has been passed and nothing's left inside. You can get an infection, you can hemorrhage.
Sure.
I mean, Well, on the same day that this event took place, another pregnant lady, 23-year-old Cindy Ray, who was 8 months along in her pregnancy, she had been to her OB appointment at Kirtland Air Force Base. Her husband, Sam, a military policeman, goes over to the clinic to meet her, but the nurse tells him, well, you just missed her. She just left. And let me just make a little note here. So their name is Cindy and Sam Ray. So Ray is their last name.
Gotcha.
And Darci's husband's first name is Ray.
Okay.
That could get confusing. So I'm going to try really hard to make sure I'm very careful about making that clear.
Okay.
Cindy had left not even 5 minutes before, and Sam had seen her Chevy Blazer still in the parking lot. So he knew she must be nearby, but after looking through the building, he couldn't locate her. So he has to leave and go pick up their 2-year-old son, Luke, from the babysitter. He then continues to look for her all around the Air Force Base for actually another couple of hours after he picks up their child, and he can't find her anywhere. Her car was just left there in the parking lot. So, of course, he's actually getting pretty worried at this point. By 6:30 p.m., he does report her missing, and then he has to take his 2-year-old home, and he, gets him ready for bed. And once he gets his child to bed, he starts calling around. He's calling bus stations and hospitals and airports and everywhere, just trying to find out what happened to Cindy. He also calls Cindy's midwife, Sister Rosemary, to see if maybe she can shed some light on where Cindy may have gone.
Right.
And at that point, she's not able to help him. But Sister Rosemary does happen to be on duty at the hospital where Darci Pierce had come in and shown up earlier that afternoon with her baby after giving birth to her baby in the car. And there's been quite a stir with that event and the strange refusal by Darci to get checked out.
Yes.
So I believe Sister Rosemary may have been getting a little suspicious and putting 2 and 2 together around that time.
Right.
It is more than a little odd that the blood on Darci is not in the right place, and things just seem a little off.
Okay.
So by that evening, around 10 o'clock, so they had been in the hospital all those hours trying to get Darci checked out. They're taking their time checking out the baby, trying to convince her. Darci finally, she just wants out of there. So she agrees to let them give her an exam as long as the doctors and nurses don't share with her husband what their findings are.
Oh, my gracious.
And they quickly confirm what they have already suspected, which is that Darci had not recently given birth. And so obviously they want to know where this baby came from. When she is questioned, her story is that she did not want her husband to know it wasn't his baby. She claimed that the baby had been born by a surrogate mother in Santa Fe that she had paid $10,000 to for the baby. In 1987, the Baby M trial was the first contested surrogacy, and as such, it had captured the attention of the nation. What had happened was a couple had paid another lady $10,000 to be a surrogate mother for them, and then when it came down to it, she didn't want to give the baby up.
Okay.
And so that had been all over the news. That news had caught the nation's attention.
Right.
Major networks were carrying it. It was all in the papers. This was a very well-known case. It was actually going to trial in January of 1987. It had been decided on by the end of March.
Okay.
This was not new information to Darci. And so I feel like when they asked her, where did you get this baby? And she said a surrogate mother, it's because
she had heard that. And the $10,000.
Exactly, the same amount.
Right.
And keep in mind, at that time, paid surrogacy was not a common thing. And not everybody knew about that.
Right.
So
that's just now really getting popular. So yeah.
So I feel like she actually was getting her lies from what had been going on in the world during that time.
Gotcha.
Okay, so Darci also claims that a midwife had attended the birth and had helped Darci to deceive her husband by splashing blood on her legs.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah. Well, there's absolutely no way the hospital was buying this story.
Sure.
Yeah.
They'd have to be idiots.
I mean, the umbilical cord was not even properly clamped, as a midwife would have done.
Wasn't it bitten?
It was bitten in two. So that's not jiving. The hospital staff, they then decide to lock the nursery, and they call the police. So the police arrive. They start questioning Darci. Who's the midwife? Where'd you get the $10,000? And she has really no good answers for them. She makes up a few lies and excuses, but they don't ring true. I mean, they're ridiculous.
Yeah.
Then they ask her, do you know Cindy Ray? She calmly says, no, she doesn't know her. They continue to question her about Cindy being missing. She denies knowing anything. They keep her there at the hospital. And so around 3:30 in the morning, her husband, Ray, who thinks he's just had a newborn baby.
Oh, bless his heart.
Yeah. He is informed that baby is not his. And the authorities did say they could quickly tell that he was just as surprised as them. He was not in on this, that he really thought that was his baby.
Okay.
Now, I've always thought it was crazy. How could the husband not know? I mean, even if she's faking this pregnancy wearing maternity clothes, wouldn't you be able to tell? But
I mean, it happens a lot.
I know. It's weird. But she had actually been eating a lot and purposefully gaining weight to fake this pregnancy.
Okay.
So I thought, okay, well, I mean, you can fake symptoms, you can wear maternity clothes, but at the end of the day, you can't fake a belly. But I guess you can.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
I guess you can do whatever you need to do. After hours and hours of questioning Darci all through the night, she's still maintaining her story. Finally, around mid-morning, one of the nurses lets her hold the baby. And she's holding the baby and cradling it and talking to the nurse. And she begins to talk about her childhood, her bad childhood growing up. She had basically been given away at 11 days old. Her dad was some kind of a traveling salesman and had actually just given her away to a family that he sold stuff to.
Oh, my goodness.
I know. And I'm thinking this was 1987. So 20 years before that.
Right.
That doesn't seem like that would even still happen. Stuff like that sounds like something that would happen in the Wild West.
Yeah.
But not in the 1960s something.
Oh, yeah. 60s. You're right. Okay.
Yeah. So that was weird to me. But
yeah.
And she says she didn't like the family she grew up with. She had many issues. So she really wanted out of her home life. And so she had moved in with Ray in 1985. So 2 years prior to this. Her family didn't even attend her graduation. And I'm thinking she must have already been living with Ray because that was just 2 years prior, and she's only 19. So probably
yeah.
at 17, she met him.
Okay.
Yeah. And they actually got married after she told him she was pregnant. So that was kind of a deciding factor. I'm not going to say if he wouldn't have married her had she not been pregnant, but
That probably pushed him into making that decision quicker.
yeah. Well, that pregnancy turned out to be a fake pregnancy.
Oh.
But she had been pregnant once before and had miscarried that baby. And it was after that she became obsessed with getting a baby. She was so desperate that she announced a pregnancy again in 1986, the next year. And that pregnancy was also a sham.
So did he know she was lying about this? Did he ever find out that she was lying?
He did. Because here's what happened with that. When her due date rolled around with that one, and she needed to produce a baby, she told her coworkers that her baby had been born stillborn, and then she wanted her husband to back her up in her lie.
Oh my goodness.
And he refused. He was like, no, not doing that.
She needed some psychiatric care.
Definitely. And two, I'm thinking you would think at that point he would realize
Right.
that she needed some help and that she was a little bit, obsessed. But, sometimes, I don't think he did. Sometimes men can kind of be oblivious to...
Especially when they're in love. They just kind of overlook things, I think.
Yeah. Or if you're newlywed and you're working and trying to pay the bills and you're just not thinking about stuff. Maybe he's missing some of these signs with her.
I'm sure he never saw this coming.
Right. I don't think he did. Well, shortly after that, in December of 86, she announces another pregnancy, and she claims that her due date is in May of 1987. But then she changed that due date to July 16th, and then she changed it again to July 23rd. So also, I would think he would kind of notice she keeps changing her due dates.
She's done this before, and now she's changing her due date.
So I don't know if he's just totally oblivious or what's going on, but anyway. But now July's here, and she's got to produce a baby. And she did produce a baby.
Yeah,
she did. Just wasn't her baby. She's at the hospital being questioned. She's had no sleep all night. The questioning continues, and the police decide to try another tactic. So they start asking her, well, how do you think this baby's mother would feel without her child? And then they ask her, well, do you think this baby would feel the same way about being raised by a stranger as you felt about being raised by strangers? And maybe that starts to get into her a little bit.
Yeah.
So they ask her, do you know where this baby's mother is? And according to the LA Times piece written in April of 1988, this is a quote. She answers them with, maybe something terrible has happened, but I can't bring it up. And then shortly after that, she also says, I've done something horribly wrong. I'm afraid something's wrong with the woman.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah. It's at this point she starts to unravel. And she ultimately does confess to what she's done. She confesses to one of the nurses. The nurse was Elizabeth Kohler, and she had come back into the room with Darci. And Darci said, Elizabeth, I killed her. My mother's going to hate me.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. And I thought that was an odd quote, too, because she just said she really hated her family growing up.
Yeah.
And I think at one point I had read that she especially did not like her adoptive mother. So I don't know why she's worried that she's going to hate her. Like, that was weird to me that was part of the quote. Well, obviously, now the focus is on finding Cindy Ray. The police, they're hoping, well, maybe she's not dead. Maybe we can find her. So here, I'm going to go ahead and tell you what really had happened that day. So Darci had seen Cindy coming out of the OB appointment that day. I'm assuming Darci was probably sitting at that OB office looking for a pregnant woman.
So she didn't know her?
No, they did not know each other. She had parked right beside of her and had approached her as Cindy was leaving the clinic. Remember that toy gun that she had asked the car salesman to move?
Mm-hmm.
Well, she had used that toy gun. That was a fake 9mm Ruger. And she had used that to get Cindy into her car. Now, I was thinking,
Poor Cindy.
I know. I was thinking, well, how could she not know it was a toy gun? It's got that orange tip on it. It didn't have orange tip on it because they didn't have those on those guns in 1987.
Oh.
In 1988 is when a law was signed requiring those orange tips to be on. So if she had bought this prior to that, it probably looked very real.
Sure.
And not that those orange tips can't be removed anyway, but that was probably not anything she had to deal with. She probably had a toy gun that looked real.
Right.
And actually, I want to say I found that about the law being signed in an article on ranker.com by Molly Weinfurter.
Oh, okay.
Just wanted to credit that source. Well, at some point, so she gets Cindy in her car. They start driving along Interstate 40 heading into the mountains. Darci pulls off the road, and then there's like this little side service road off of that she drives down. So it's like, out, not right on the highway. And she stops. They get out of the car. Somehow she overpowers Cindy, and she strangles her with a pink monitor belt. You know, the belts that when you go in and they're monitoring your baby's heart rate when you're pregnant, and they wrap it around your waist. Well, Cindy had that in her possession, and she uses that to strangle her. Not to kill her. She just chokes her until she passes out. While she is passed out, she then proceeds to use Cindy's Blazer ignition key for her car to make an incision about 5 inches long.
Oh my goodness.
And removes the baby by a very crude cesarean section delivery.
That is terrible.
Terrible and beyond crazy to me. I'm like, how in the world do you get a key to cut into a stomach? I mean,
I don't know. Was this not premeditated?
I don't know what Darci's thinking. I mean, obviously she's waiting outside that clinic because she's got to get a baby that day. She's supposed to meet her husband, Ray, at the hospital to be induced or whatever. And she's obviously going to be found out.
If she knew she was going to do that, you would think she would have some tools. I mean, that sounds terrible, but nothing worse than keys.
It sounds premeditated, but maybe just not very well thought out.
Yeah.
But I don't even know how you could apply enough pressure of a key.
She had to be motivated, very, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like driven. She had a...
And that was the one thing I remember hearing. When I heard about this as a teenager and that was all over the news, I just remember thinking, how in the world can you do that with a key?
Yeah,
it's beyond crazy. So she takes the baby out and she leaves Cindy behind. And that's when she drove the car to the car dealership. I'm assuming the car dealership was between where she was and the hospital. And she begins the last part of her pregnancy ruse, which is claiming to have given birth in the car.
So she leaves that woman there.
She does.
Oh my goodness.
I know.
That is brutal.
It is brutal. It's very brutal. And I'm assuming too, I guess I'm doing a lot of assuming, but I'm just putting the pieces together. I'm thinking she probably wanted to give some credence to her story. And so she stops at this car dealership where the guy has already seen her be very pregnant and close to due date.
Yes.
Like, I feel like that's just part of her little thing to make it seem more legitimate.
Legit, yeah.
Yeah. Also, during the trial afterwards, there was an eyewitness who came across this situation. His name was Theron Hartshorn. He had also been driving along Interstate 40 that day, and he had turned onto a U.S. Forest Service lane. He was heading to a house that he was having built. And he came upon a white Volkswagen that was kind of blocking that service road a little bit, and the doors were open. So it was in his way. So he gets out of his vehicle to see like what's going on. And he is approached by a woman coming out of the trees. She tells him that she and her friend need to be alone. She is very insistent about it. Well, he doesn't see the friend at that point. He just wants to get the car doors closed so he can get by her.
Yeah.
And so he thinks, well, she's out here in the bushes with some man.
Okay, yeah.
He's not interested in getting
He
into
don't
that
care.
situation. He just wants to go on about his business. And so that's what he tells her. I just need to get by. He starts to leave, but he does look back. And when he looks back, he does notice another woman lying on her back on the ground on a hill. And the lady who had approached him is climbing back up that hill towards her. So then he changes his mind and he thinks, oh, that's two women making out over there.
Okay.
And I'm going about my own business.
Right. Mind my business and go on.
Leave this alone. And that's what he testified to in court. Well, after Darci confesses all this to the police officers, what she had done, they want her to take them to Cindy, like show us where you left her. They're still hoping maybe there's a chance she's not dead yet. So while they're in the car on the way there, Darcy's still giving up all these details, telling them how she did the crime, and she tells them about the toy gun. And finally, they get to the place where this happened, and where Darci had originally parked her car, and she just loses it at this point. She starts screaming and crying and saying, "I hope she's not dead." But sadly, at that point, Cindy has already bled out, and she is dead.
Oh, my goodness.
Darci points out Cindy's body laying by some trees, and the authorities, they see what kind of a brutal crime has taken place. That monitor belt was actually hanging from one of the branches. Like, I don't guess it was still around her neck at that point. And now they have to go inform Sam, Cindy's very worried husband, about what has happened to his wife.
Does he have any idea at this point?
I don't think that at this point he knew that somebody at the hospital had come in with a newborn. He knows his wife is missing and he's very worried.
And what's that timeline of when, how long had she been missing at that point?
This was actually the next morning.
Okay.
When she had first gone into the hospital, it was 4:45 p.m.
Okay.
She had stayed there, with them trying to get her checked out. Then they had locked the nursery, called the police. All that had happened through the night. And this was the next morning that she's taken police. So I think at this point, all Sam knows is that his wife has been missing overnight and is nowhere to be found. But remember, Sister Rosemary, the midwife, I'm sure she has already put two and two together at this point.
Yeah.
The military chaplain and Sam's commander are the ones who are going to go and let him know what has happened. So they accompany him to the hospital where Sam is handed a 6-pound, 8-ounce baby girl.
That breaks my heart. I mean,
I know, it does.
I'm so thankful that the baby made it.
Mm-hmm.
But oh my goodness,
Yeah.
what a bittersweet.
Mm-hmm. Tragic on one hand, and you're supposed to be enjoying the joy of new birth.
Yeah.
And so you're handed this precious baby, and you've lost your wife. So very tragic. And she's a healthy baby girl. Not only did she make it, but she's totally fine.
Good. Oh, I'm thankful for that.
I know. She looked like her mother, and he named her Amelia.
Oh.
Yeah. Darci is charged, of course.
Good.
Yeah. And she has to go to trial. And during her trial, her mental state is argued over.
Of course.
Obviously, yeah. The defense argues that she has multiple personalities. The one who could kill for a baby and the one who just desperately wanted to be a mother herself. They claim that under hypnosis, she speaks of the dark one, the dark side of her personality. On the other hand, the prosecutor's psychiatrist agree, yes, she is indeed sick, but she is not insane.
No, she knew exactly what she was doing.
I agree. And the state is able to convince the jury of that as well. Darci Pierce is found guilty of first-degree murder, kidnapping, and child abuse. And she is sentenced to life in prison.
Good.
Cindy Ray is laid to rest by her family. And now Sam Ray is left to raise his 2 children by himself. His mother, Millie, does come to help him care for his children. Luke, their 2-year-old son, and then the baby.
Okay.
Now, this is what Sam has said afterwards. I find his ability to forgive, well, it has to be supernatural.
Yeah.
Because none of us could really forgive something like that on our own, I don't think.
Oh, I don't either.
Yeah. But here's one of the things he has said when he was asked about his children's future. He said, "I want them to know who their mommy was. She loved other people with all her heart. I imagine she felt sorry for the woman." That's a direct quote.
Wow.
And he also later claimed to feel sorry for her himself, and he held no bitterness. I just think it takes a really big man to be able to forgive such a horrible crime.
Yes. It does.
Yeah. So years later, in 2019, New Mexico put forth a bill that would allow life sentences to be fulfilled after 30 years. Since Darci was sentenced in 1988, that meant she would be eligible to be released.
Oh, okay.
I know, and you're thinking, no way.
Please, no. Yeah.
Sam Ray, Cindy's husband, he was interviewed several times. Lots of papers covered this and TV stations. And I actually watched a TV interview, and I'm going to try to link that in our show notes so you can see it. But he linked us an interview that he did in which he expressed how much pain he still deals with all these many years later. And he was concerned that that bill would allow Pierce to go free. Again, not that he was holding unforgiveness toward her.
Right. But she needed to pay for her crime.
Absolutely. And so, of course, he wants her to stay there because if she had that kind of ability to cut a baby out of its mother,
Yes.
I think she could very, very well be dangerous still.
Yeah.
So he was concerned about that. And all over the internet, all I could find was that bill had come up and he was, worried about it. But I couldn't ever find did the bill pass? I had to do some digging. Finally, I found it.
Okay.
According to New Mexico In Depth, which was dated April 2019, although the House and Senate passed the bill, the governor of New Mexico vetoed it at that time due to pressure from the attorney general and 14 district attorneys.
Good.
They had really put some pressure on about that. She said she doesn't necessarily agree with their arguments, but she wanted to give them more time to weigh in on the issues that were put forth in the bill. And so it was vetoed at that time. From my research of the New Mexico Corrections Department, as of October 2022, Darci Pierce was still incarcerated there.
Okay. And hopefully she will be for the rest of her life.
I know. I don't think 30 years is a life sentence.
No, it's not.
She needs to be there for the rest of her life. One reason I'm so fascinated with true crime, and you and I, we've talked about this a lot, is just that whole psychology behind
Oh, yeah.
why people commit crimes, and if some of them could have been prevented, like if you had just known what to look for.
Yeah.
I'm always asking myself that. I'm certainly not a psychiatrist. We talk about it a lot.
Me either. I think I am. But
Right, we do, but we're not. I read up on this whole phenomenon of babies being abducted from the womb. The clinical name for it is newborn kidnapping by cesarean section. However, it has also become dubbed womb raiding or womb raiders. Sometimes they call it fetal snatching. There are patterns that are observed regarding the baby snatchings, and the perpetrators share hauntingly similar characteristics.
pathological lying, for one.
Well, I didn't have that one listed, but I think you are spot on.
Mm-hmm.
And I would think probably it's somebody who has, like you said, the whole pathological. It's not somebody who's just lying for this reason. They've probably lied about a lot of things and it comes very natural to them.
Yeah.
Would you think?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. The attacker is a woman, usually. Sometimes they have help, but it's always a woman who can't have children for some reason or another. Sometimes the woman already does have children, but for some reason can no longer have children. Other times she believes that she's infertile for some other reason. Maybe she's been diagnosed or something has happened, and she just knows that she can't have a baby. And feeling desperate or obsessed for a baby is the next thing. Like she's just to the point where she's desperate. And she has created that lie already.
Yeah.
That she's pregnant and she's trying to fool people. And then this was what you talked about earlier. They'll purposefully gain weight to fake the symptoms so they can, continue their charade. And usually it's for two reasons. One is that desperateness for the baby. Mm-hmm. And the other one is to control their spouse or their relationship.
I was going to say, I think it's more about that. I think they have created a lie. They want to keep their man. And I think it's more self-motivated than it is about really wanting a baby. Because I know women who have done that, who have children that they don't even raise.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
So I really think it's more, and they've created this elaborate lie and they want to save face.
I'm so glad you said that because you nailed it. That was it. I think you are exactly right. And some of these psychologists that I have read would agree with you.
Okay, good.
Yep. You just explained.
I told you I'm a psychologist.
You are.
In the making.
Yep. Well, many of them do not get the mental help they need early enough, but eventually do get diagnosed with a mental illness afterwards. And usually it's multiple personality disorder. Many of them come from traumatic backgrounds, such as Darci. One thing I did not mention when I was talking about her background is that she also had been sexually abused from as early as the 3rd grade. And the trauma of being given away as a baby had already really kind of messed her up. She admits to that.
Yeah.
These women are also very careful to choose their victims. Just like we said, Darci went to that OB appointment. They had to find somebody who that they could, overpower,
right,
befriend. A lot of times they do it by befriending them first. So we have these patterns, and although those patterns are helpful to observe, unfortunately, they're only helpful after the fact.
Sure. I don't think anybody expects that or sees that coming.
No, and you don't know somebody's faking a pregnancy until after either they don't produce the baby or something like this happens, unfortunately.
Because a lot of them go to really extravagant measures. They'll produce ultrasound pictures and pregnancy tests and,
Yeah.
So nobody has a clue.
Exactly. I actually have read about a few that have actually had fake ultrasounds or stolen other people's ultrasounds. Yep. It's bizarre.
It is.
Here are some statistics from the Center for Missing and Exploited Children. This was listed in October of 2021. There have been 21 cases of fetal abduction since 1987. So that year that happened. And that only accounts for 6% of infant abductions, which means the others are after the baby's born.
Okay.
Prior to that, there had only been a handful. Out of those 21 cases, 19 of the mothers were killed and 9 of the babies died as a result. I know, that's incredibly sad.
How many of these did any of them get away with?
If they did, we don't know about them.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. It doesn't, it's a crime that literally nobody gets away with.
Right. You're going to get found out.
Yes.
It's an incredibly sad ending for what is supposed to be a very, happy occasion. And so I remember when I was pregnant with my first child and I had heard about some of these. And actually, I was hearing about fetal abductions happening in hospitals. Like nurses who would steal them out of the hospital and that kind of thing. And I was paranoid about that. And I remember our hospital had a new pregnancy maternal wing. Mm-hmm. And I was so excited because they had implemented new policies in which the mama's bracelet had to match the baby's bracelet and only certain people could come in. And that gave me a lot of relief,
Yeah.
Those hospital restrictions started being put in place because of fetal abductions. And so now women were becoming more... They couldn't get a baby that way.
Right.
So now they're having to try to get the baby before the mom gets to the hospital. And so that was kind of like a cause and effect type thing.
Okay.
That I read about.
That makes sense.
And so I'm like, I want to say, be careful if you're pregnant and that some strange person starts befriending you or even these days hitting you up on Facebook or whatever. I don't want to be paranoid and live in fear because I can tend to be that way a little bit. But at the same time, especially if you're like 8 months along and you're due and all of a sudden somebody's...
Right.
Be careful.
Be careful. Right. Be careful.
But again, there's just no way to know. You can't go through life in fear, and there's no way to know if the person you're talking to is a crazy, evil person who means harm.
Who expects something like that?
Nobody does. And you shouldn't. You shouldn't go through life expecting that. And so another little twist on that. Do you remember earlier when we talked about the Baby M surrogacy case?
Yes.
Where Darci we feel like her lies were coming from what was going on in the news during that time. Well, that baby, and a lot of people know that case. It was famous. It was called the Baby M case.
Right.
That child grew up, and when she was in college, she had to write her dissertation. Her dissertation was called Reviving Solomon, Modern Day Questions Regarding the Long-Term Implications for the Children of Surrogacy Arrangements.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, again, I know the surrogacy thing's a rabbit trail from what we're talking about.
Sure, but
I did find it interesting that she even correlated that story of Solomon to the whole situation of that maternal instinct.
Yeah.
Out of control.
Yes.
So to me, as I'm researching it, all those little connections are being made. And anyway.
That was good.
That's the end of my story for today.
Such a sad story, though. Oh, my goodness.
It is so very sad. And there are others. You should look them up because some of those stories are... this one to me is crazy because of how she did the C-section. Good gracious.
Yeah. Terrible.
Terrible.
Now those were some hard times. I'd like to thank y'all for listening and let you know we really do appreciate your support. And I'd like to remind you that no matter what platform you use, you go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe, and light up all 5 stars. And if you're listening on Apple, leave us a review. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, you can message us at hardtimesandtruecrimes.com. Now, when I record, I modify my voice a little bit. I don't actually talk like somebody that would sell biscuits for a living. And I remember the first time I tried to record a portion of the show in my real voice, my wife looked at me with a little bit of disgust in her eye and said, "You sound like a freaking Yankee." Now that's probably because I'm from New Jersey, but nevertheless, I tried to make sure that never happened again. If you'd like to make sure you don't leave your family staring in disgust because you sound like a freaking Yankee, make sure you tell everybody you know, and a few people you don't, to check out Hard Times and True Crimes. And as always, till next time, goodbye.